You are God. That's a big statement. And I want to ask the question today, if you say you are God, who is you concerning your God? And that seems very self-evident, it seems easy to answer, but what I'm going to suggest to you that actually we knowingly or unbeknownst to us, because sometimes we don't have awareness about this, that we actually very, very quickly worship other gods. We very quickly yield, surrender, freely give our lives to the gods of this world, yes, little g, and in sewing, when you're making little dresses, what you do is, in doing this, what we find is we're bankrupting our ability to be happy. We're absolutely sabotaging our ability to ever live today, in the moment today, with joy and peace and all of the fruits of the Spirit that God wants for us. So I want to challenge you a little bit today. Per usual, all this stuff is here in the sermon notes. I hope you'll go home and read the Scriptures, study this on your own. But I really want to challenge you. I want to encourage you as well. But I want to challenge you to go home and to think about, are you yielding your life, even without knowing it, to the gods of this world? And is that one of the reasons that both you and all of us have as many problems as we do? Big questions. On the bottom of this, you'll see questions for the dinner table. I hope that you will actually put this in your pocket, and when you go eat lunch, that you will ask whoever's at the table with you one of these questions, like, can we be happy if other people or things have control over us? I think that's a good question. Of course I would, because I wrote it, but can whoever's at the table, can we be happy if other people or things have control over us? And then here's where we're going to start. Jesus was never controlled by anyone or anything. And I challenge you to come up with any example of when that statement is wrong. I don't see it. Matter of fact, we're going to look at several scriptures how this is true. Why, if Jesus was never controlled by other people or things, why is that an example for us to follow? Why does that matter? Now, this is one of those scriptures that often we overlook, one of the truths and teachings of Jesus that we don't see so much as a teaching because it's not in the Sermon on the Mount, so to speak. It isn't one of those things where, and we're going to use this term locus of control. If you were here back in 2017, it's been a while, but Brad Franklin, we hired him. He was a Christian counselor who came in and talked to us for he just was great, but about basic principles of healthy marriages. And one of the things he shared with us is this idea of locus of control. I want to start with it, I want to end with it, but it's the idea that we've got within us, every human being has a center, a focal point that has mastery over our emotions, our thoughts, even our behaviors. Whether you know you're doing it or not, when we give that locus of control away to another person or to another thing, when you do that, that person or that thing has control or mastery over you. We're going to go into this in depth. To start, I want to read 5 passages of Scripture, 2 from the first chapter of Mark, 2 from the second chapter, and 1 from the third chapter, something like that, where we're going to see Jesus never gave his locus of control away. Jesus never allowed other people or the things of this world to control him. Now, no doubt, he was crucified, right? So you could say, well, they controlled him. But even throughout the crucifixion, I think I could argue, and you see this when Jesus was before Pilate, or when Jesus was on the cross, he was still in control of what was going on inside of him, even if the world was spinning out of control around him. This is a huge concept for us as Christians, not just to master, I don't think we ever master it, but just to comprehend it to begin with. We see it over and over with Jesus, so I want to throw some of these scriptures at you to begin with, and then we'll get into some of the meat as to how this applies to everyday life. So we're studying the book of Mark, and there are 2 passages in Mark chapter 1. We're going to look quickly. If you brought your Bible, we're just going to go Mark chapter 1, Mark chapter 2, and Mark chapter 3, and look at some of these instances, just a few of many I could have chosen, regarding this idea of Jesus not allowing other people or the world, the circumstances, the pressures of the world to dictate, right, who he was going to be and how he was going to respond. Now, last week, James preached a little bit, and great job, James. That was an awesome message. Yeah. But he preached on John 8. Did you get a clap? I never get claps. I expect a clap out of somebody today. So I'm watching all of it. Anyway, he talked about John 8, where the Pharisees catch the woman in adultery and they drag her through the streets, and Jesus is teaching in the temple. And I care, like everybody's there to just hear the word of God, and you think everybody's in a good mood, and all of a sudden this mob scene comes up, and they throw this woman in front of Jesus, and they basically say, do you remember the story? They all have rocks. This woman was caught in adultery. Jesus, you know, the law says what everybody understands is normal. We should stone her to death. What do you say we do? So what I want you to notice is the pressure Jesus was under to react to the mob, to the Pharisees. It was a very intense situation. They wanted his locus of control, right? They were trying to control him. How did he respond? Remember? He bent down. He didn't respond to them, did he? Not like they wanted. He took a deep breath. He bent down. Yeah. He started drawing in the dirt. And then when Jesus was ready on his timing, he looks up at him and he says, yeah, I get it. That's what the law says. Those of you who are without sin, you cast the first stone. What did they do? They all started to drop their rocks and they walked away. He then looks at the woman and he says to her, where are your accusers? They've left. He's like, neither do I accuse you, but go your way and sin no more. Who was really in control of that situation the entire time? Jesus was. Right? Back in Mark chapter 1. So what I want you to see now, I want you to think about not the teachings of Jesus, the example of Jesus. Remember, as a disciple of Christ, it's not just that we learn what he says. That's just head nod. We also need to live the way he lived. And when he offers an example like this for us to follow, we need to ask, why is he acting this way? What's the motivation underneath why he's acting this way? So they didn't control him there. In Mark chapter 1, right after he, and I'll preach on this, so I'm not going to go into detail, but right after he comes out of the water from his baptism, he goes out to be tempted in the wilderness. 3 temptations. The point of the temptations is Jesus is hungry, he's tired, and Satan appears and starts to pressure Jesus, right, to do what Satan wants Jesus to do. Ultimately, the last temptation, Jesus is he's just starving. It's so hard to make good decisions when you're hangry. Y'all know what hangry is? That's why I got to get done on time so y'all get hangry at me. Then I won't get one clap, James. I'll just get one. Anyway. No? All right, I'll keep working. I'm gonna get them laughing, Cameron. So I'm gonna chase the rabbit until I get a laugh. I'm getting a laugh out of you, Bruce. I see you smiling. Oh, you are smiling. That's what happens, Pam, when you come in person. I know. And now you're laughing when you put your mask up. Anyway, Mark chapter 1, after the temptations, the last temptation, Satan says to Jesus, think about the implications. If you'll bow and worship me, I'll give you the world, in essence, and you don't even have to go to the cross. What does it mean to bow and worship somebody? It means that you're yielding to their authority. You're yielding to their control. And what did Jesus say? No. Yes, no. He said, you have no power over me, and I'm not giving you any power over me. Let's keep going. In Mark chapter 1, verse 32. I love this passage. This is one of the reasons why, one of the scriptures about why we need to have daily devotionals. But I'll start reading in verse 32. That evening at sunset, people brought to Jesus those who were sick and demon-possessed, and the whole town gathered near the door. Jesus healed many. That means he didn't heal them all who were sick. He threw out many demons, not all of them. He didn't allow the demons to speak. That's the messianic secret we talked about a couple weeks ago. By the way, if you've missed any of these sermons, I would encourage you to go back, watch them. They're all online, are really easy to access. But this is a great point. So they're all pressing in on him. All these people, they want stuff. Peer pressure. Early in the morning, well before sunrise, here's what Jesus did. He left. he walked away. He left the crowds. He left the disciples. He left them all. They were asleep. He's like, shoo, I'm getting out of here. And he goes off to a deserted place by himself to spend some time with the Father for renewal, for rest. But I want you to notice it's not just about him going and having a devotional time. It's about him getting control or keeping control of the situation in his life. He wasn't going to allow the disciples or the pressure of the crowds to dictate who he was going to be or what he was going to do. And when they all started pressing in on him, what was his response? You see? He walked away. Now, a lot of times we walk away from people and we feel so guilty. Well, there's some real meat here about how not only should you walk away, but you need to walk away for your own personal health, because you can't minister to those types of pressures in the world if you become unhealthy too. So Jesus leaves, and watch what happens. The disciples figure out, and the word here is, just think about this, the verb. Simon and the disciples tracked him down. What does that sound like? They're like bees to honey. You know, it's like, where is he? Where's Jesus? They tracked him down. And then they kind of accosted him. They're like, where have you been? Everyone's been looking for you. What are you thinking? Why are you doing this? They're trying to take control of Jesus in the situation. How did he respond? Oh my goodness, you're right. Let's go back. What was I thinking? To leave all those poor, helpless people? Is that what he said? No. He replied, listen, this is great. Let's head in the other direction. Read it for yourself. Let's head in the other direction. Now, I just want to stop there. What do you mean, let's head in the other direction? Don't those people matter? Didn't Jesus care? And the answer is, of course he cared. But there was something deeper going on here that I will suggest to you all of us struggle with. All of us have a real problem saying, let's go in the other direction. Mark chapter 2. And by the way, that's the end of Mark chapter 1. So after 2 months, we finished Mark chapter 1. I hope that you've enjoyed Mark chapter 1. There's a lot here, isn't there? Just so much. Mark chapter 2, verse 18. The gist of this story is that John's disciples and the Pharisees, they're all beginning to criticize Jesus and the ways of Jesus. They come up and they're like, we fast, the Pharisees fast, everybody's fasting. Jesus, why aren't you and your disciples fasting? What's wrong with you? You know this is the way things are. And Jesus wouldn't be pressured. He didn't give them his control. He basically said, look, new wine is put in new wineskins. The old way of John the Baptist, the old way of the Pharisees, the old covenant, that works for them, and it worked for them. But Jesus is like, this doesn't work for me, and it doesn't work for my disciples, because what we're doing here is a new thing. He didn't allow them to pressure him into changing his standards, his morals, his theology, any of it, right? He held the line. In Mark chapter 3, oh, this is a good one, because I know none of y'all will understand this. His family and the legal experts wanted more attention. They wanted him to be, again, controlled by them to do what they wanted him to do instead of what he felt like he needed to do. I'll start reading in verse 20. Mark 3, verse 20. Jesus enters the house, and a crowd gathered again so that it was impossible for him and his followers to even eat. So there are people pressuring him. Ever feel pressured by people? Of course you do. So they were pressuring him, and his family heard what was happening. Can you believe his family did this to him? Because I know our families never do anything to us that aren't perfectly in our best interest, right? I could chase that rabbit all day. Anyway, his family says, Jesus is out of his mind. They're outside saying, what is wrong with you? Come out here, be with us. Be who we want you to be. Right after that, the legal experts came in from Jerusalem, and they said, this guy is possessed by Satan himself. So his family's pressing in on him. The legal experts are pressing in on him. What does Jesus do? For one, he says to the legal experts, he said, look, a house divided cannot stand. If I was working for Satan, I'm not going to cast out Satan's demons. That's just dumb. Use your brain. He actually didn't say that, but you know. And then his mother and brothers arrived, his family, and they stood outside. There are so many people, and they're frustrated. They want stuff from Jesus. They want his time. They want his attention. They want him to mold into what they wanted him to be. And a crowd was seated around him, and they said, look, your mother and your brother and your sisters, they're outside looking for you, asking for you. They want to see you. So even the people inside now are saying, your family, oh my goodness. And Jesus replied, and we struggle with this. We struggle with this because we think because it's our family, maybe they should take precedence over Jesus. Folks, that is a big mistake. So many people think, well, I'm going to heal my marriage. I'm not going to go to church. I'm not going to do what I need to do with the Lord because it's better for my marriage because my spouse is an antagonist. No, friends. The only way you can be who you need to be to your spouse, especially if they're being antagonistic, is to get your life right with Christ and keep it right with Christ. And just to pray as much as you can that they will conform to Christ's will for them. Anyway, looking around at those seated, Jesus said, look, you are my mother, you are my brothers, you are my sisters, for whoever does God's will is my brother and my sister and my mother. Family's thicker than blood. No, it's not. The only tie that binds long-term are our ties with Christ. The only time that we can come together and truly be united as a family is when we have a common bond underneath the surface values that holds us together like glue when we disagree on everything else. This is one reason why we cannot be unequally yoked in our marriages. Because when everything else falls apart around you, if both of you believe in Jesus and you believe in the deeper values of Jesus, like sacrificial love, that kind of stuff, you can work through it. But if one person doesn't and the other person does, all you're going to have is a situation where one person is enabling the others taking advantage, and it just gets ugly. Now, where in those examples do you see Jesus yielding control of his life to the people who are pressuring him? I'll say it again. Now, we've just gone through a couple illustrations in 3 chapters. There's a whole, we could have spent all the time just reading Scripture about this. You see it over and over and over and over. Jesus never, and I mean never, yields to the pressure of people or the world around him. In essence, he never gives his locus of control, what is the point of focus that has mastery over your emotions and yourself. He never yields control of himself to the people or the circumstances around him. Never. Is this important? Before I tell you why I think it's important, are you doing this? How many times in the past 7 days have you allowed someone in the world who's disappointed you, or someone in the world who's, made you some promises that you thought they could just make you so happy, or that you've allowed a situation in the world, whether it be COVID or money or job, where you've taken control of yourself and you've put it in their hands and said, you're going to dictate how I feel, how I behave, my attitude today. Not me and not Christ. We do it all the time. Let me tell you something. It's not good that we do. Why is it not good? I'm so glad that you asked me that question. I can hear you asking me that question. What is idolatry? 10 Commandments. First, thou shalt not have any gods before me. You shall not worship idols. What is idolatry? What is a god? Little g or a big G? Something like whoever or whatever it is on the altar of your heart that ultimately controls you and your decisions. That's what a god is, and that's what the one true God is, depending on who's controlling. People like to say God is in control. Let me be very clear. God is not in control of you unless you give him control of you. It's called free will. That's why we have so much evil and hate and hurt in the world. Right? God is not in control of you unless you give him control. And you're not going to give him control if you're allowing other gods that power. And by the way, that's one of the reasons our world is in such a mess, because people who don't worship God, they say they don't believe in God or they're whatever, they're spiritual. They are giving their hearts to all the gods of this world. How? Well, back when we did the soul detox, we talked about idolatry, and we talked about it in terms of this acrostic. It's in your sermon notes, but idols are items, duties. Those of you who are here, can you remember what's O? Others, good. Other people. L, longings. Yep. S, sufferings. Good. If this is new to you, take those sermon notes home and memorize this. Items, duties, other people, longings, sufferings. Sounds so easy, right? It's just so easy. Right. So, here's you. Thinking in terms now, okay, of locus of control. We'll just call it that. And idols. Items. Items. Think in your own head. What are items in your life? I don't know, right? I mean, and what are the items that you own or you want to own that are most important to you? For some people, it's stocks. For some people, it's bonds in retirement. For some people, it's cash in the bank. For some people, it's a car. For some people, it's their house. For some people, it's clothes. What is it for you? I don't know. But what are the items? What are the possessions? What's the stuff in your life that if you're not really careful, follow me here. You see something you want. Oh, I need a new car. I need a new house. I need whatever's on Amazon, right? You know when you've lost control when you're getting anxious about that item. If the stock's going up or down, some of you maybe had an absolute conniption fit back in March or April when the stock market dropped by 50% or more. Fair enough, if that's your retirement and you're worried about it. But let me tell you something. Think about how this works. Let's just assume we all have $10,000 worth of stocks. And we've given those stocks our locus of control, and the stocks go up. How do we feel? Oh my goodness, look how much money I have. And that happened in February, didn't it? And then by the end of March, your stocks your 10,000 is worth 4,000. How'd you feel then if you're watching the stock market every day? Terrible. Let me tell you, that's one reason why you should not ever watch stocks every day if you own them. Because what you're doing is you're saying, I'm going to let this thing control me. And literally, as the way the stock market goes, that's how you feel. You see how this works? Is this easy to do? No. For so many people, the bank account's the same way. They watch their bank account balance go up. They get the paycheck. Oh, I feel so good. And then they realize they have all these bills to pay. Oh, I feel horrible. Right? Never, ever give items your locus of control, because that's idolatry. And idolatry isn't God just saying, well, I deserve to be on the altar of your heart. How dare you not? No. God gives us rules to protect us from unhealthy living. When we idolize items, possessions, invariably you are going to go emotionally as the stock market goes. Very unhealthy. Notice it's external. Duties. This is your job. If you're a stay-at-home mom, these are your responsibilities. If you're a stay-at-home dad, I don't care. Some people would say that's me. I'm fine with that. Responsibility. Oh, I got it. Okay. This is whatever you consider your job in life. Right? Whatever you're doing that you feel like is so important. What I want you to see here is a lot of people get a job, and you'll know how this works. You go through the interview process, you get the job, and you're so excited. Oh my goodness, it's going to be the best job ever, and they're going to treat me awesome. They love me for who I am, and they appreciate the work I do. And, you give that job your locus of control, and then a couple months, a year later, 2 years later, you realize they don't care about me. They just care if I produce. They care if I'm helping for profitability. And if I'm not, I may even get fired. And how do you feel then? Horrible. Should your peace, love, joy, whatever be dictated by whether people at your job appreciate you or not? I would suggest if you raise kids, that's all I do. Okay. Well, when your kids are in a good mood, oh, life's so great. But when your kids are horrible, oh, I'm terrible. Right? I mean, that's just, you'll see how this works? Other people. This one's tough. People who get married. Not all, but normally you get married because the other person makes you happy. Every now and then I see people get married and I'm like, why? It's like, you're like going into this unhappy. I was like, I don't get it. But anyway, normally you get married because they make you happy and you start off, oh, you're so beautiful, you're so wonderful. Oh, you're so responsible, I respect you, right? And then you get married and then all of a sudden you got these responsibilities and you have work to do and you get to know them better and they're a mess and you didn't see all that before you got married. It's like, well, if I would have known you were like this, and years go by and you give another person your locus of control. When they treat you right, you're on top of the world. How about when they treat you wrong? Should your happiness be dictated by other people? Should your peace be determined by if somebody you care about? It doesn't have to be a spouse, whatever. I'm going to go backwards here. Let's hit sufferings first. Sufferings in the past. Happens a lot with people who are abused in the past. It's most obvious. But when something bad happens to you, maybe somebody died, somebody abused you, it's just a natural thing when bad things happen, especially the younger you are, especially if it's from a parent where normally the natural inclination of a child is to give their parent the locus of control. That's the nature of being a parent. And as a parent, when kids won't give that to you, you know something isn't right in that. It's like, this isn't right. But when a parent abuses that parental authority control that the kid naturally gets, it can ruin the child forever. I've counseled with people 20, 30, 40 years after the event, and they're still scarred from what happened when they were 5 or 10 or 13. I've counseled with people whose parent died when they were 11 or 13, and they're 70 years old. And they're still viewing life through the lens of that loss. Why? This is why. It's because we give our locus of control to this other person, and in some cases that person has died, and we never took it back. They go to the grave and they still own that, and we're still hurt by it, suffering through it. We've never let it go. Should any suffering from your past dictate whether you can be happy today? In theory? No. We know this in theory. And then final, longings. Longings. This is where we think that I can't be happy today because things are wrong in my life, but in the future, when this thing is fixed, I will be happy then. COVID is just an obvious example of this. There are so many people in our world today who think, I can't be happy today because of COVID. I can't. It's not possible. I'm too afraid. I might die. People I love might die. It's all in the future, right? And we give the ability to be at peace, to have hope for the future. We give all of that a temporary pass and say, I will be that way when COVID is fixed. And so many people are miserable, and they sit in front of the television, and they watch how many more cases, how many more deaths, and they are just literally racked inside. They're just a knot, a ball of anxiety. And what they're saying to themselves is, I know I'm miserable now, I know this is unhealthy now, but I will be healthy when COVID goes away, and I get that control of myself back. Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount, don't worry about tomorrow because tomorrow is going to have enough trouble of its own. Look, folks, yes, let's be safe with COVID. But if you think when COVID is gone that there's not going to be something else, there is always something else. How many years do we have to live? If it's not COVID, it's a marital issue. If it's not a marital issue, you've got a health issue. Or a loved one you have has another health issue. If it's not that, you got a job issue. If it's not a job issue, there's always something, isn't there? When can you look at your life and say, wow, I had 2 years, it was so perfect, I didn't have a single problem? It doesn't happen. And by the way, that's not the point of this life. We're not supposed to have perfect lives down here. We're not supposed to live forever. Jesus said in John 14:28 to the disciples, they're mad at Jesus. He's like, y'all know I'm going to die. And he's like, why can't you be happy for me that I'm going to be with the Father? Read it for yourself. The point of this world is not long life and prosperity. The point of this life is for you in this moment right now to have peace and love and joy and goodness and kindness and faithfulness and patience and self-control. Self-control. That means you control you. Not the people around you, right? Not the things around you. Not you. Now, got to be careful with this one. As Jesus says, when the guy decides to get his life in order and he has a demon in there and he kicks the demon out, well, the demon goes and gets 7 friends and says, hey, there's an empty warehouse back here. Let's go. And the demon comes back with 7 friends. They all move in, and the guy's worse than ever. It's one thing. You can get control back, but I would suggest to you, you'll never keep it on your own. You'll never keep it on your own. You have to then give it to God. That's the key. Okay? Every day, and I've tried to do this the past week, and I'm realizing what a mess I am. So by the way, it just is what it is. The more awareness I have of this, the more I'm like, this is a real problem for me. So don't think that I got this figured out. I just got the theory. But one of the reasons we need to have devotional time is so we can take a step back and say, okay, God, where am I letting the people and the things of this world control me? God, as best as I can, I take that back from them. And in this moment, I give it to you. That's the sermon. Do you understand? Let me do that again. This is just Thomas talking. Every day, you need to leave the crowd and to walk away from the stuff of the world. You need to take a really deep breath. This is called confession, by the way. Where I am anxious, where I am afraid, where I am struggling, where I'm having all these issues, I need to ask myself, is this because I've given someone else or something else control of my life? Is this because I've taken what was rightfully yours, God, my locus, and I have willingly and freely given it to this person or this COVID or this money? Lord, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I've done, I didn't see it, but I see it now. I take that back. And Lord, I give it to you. Listen, you will never experience the abundance of Christ until you do this. And I mean never. You can't worship false gods and experience the blessings of the one true God. It doesn't work that way. All of us, in the season of life, there's so much uncertainty, and the world has just devolved into a chaotic panic. This should not be us. But you need to know how to get out of this ugly, negative, pessimistic cycle. And this is how. On your own, you can't. But you pull that control back and you give it to the Lord. And you're going to find, like Jesus promises, peace for your soul. How are you doing? Let's bow for a minute. Invitation. I invite you to think, where have you given control of yourself to another person that should never have had it in the past week? Where have you given control of yourself to another thing? Money, COVID, I don't know. In the past week. Where do you need to take the locus of control back from the circumstances and people around you and give it to Christ? In your own way, for just a moment, I want to encourage you to do that very thing right now, right here. And then I'll close us in a prayer. Lord, all that we are and have, we try to give to you, but you know we give it to everybody else in the world too. And so as best as we can in this moment, we take it back. We take it back from the people who hurt us. We take it back from the circumstances that we're afraid of. We take it back so that we can freely and willingly give it to you. Forgive us of our trespasses in this area. And as best as we can, Lord, we do pray your will be done, your kingdom come here on earth as it is in heaven. For those of you online, those here, I do pray you would know the height and the depth and the width and the breadth of God's love for you. May you truly know the peace of our Lord Jesus Christ that surpasses all comprehension. May you live in His will and His way in the upcoming week. May you daily walk with Him until we can meet again in His name. Amen. Before we go, Cameron's got a few announcements, and we'll wrap this up. Please remember to put your mask back on once you head out. Cameron?
All right. Oh, look at that. Look at that.
Yeah!
All right, so going out there for a second, Thomas. So 3 quick things, guys. All right. So first of all, you'll see our next steps going up here. We are not taking up tithes and offerings right now. We have a box out here. That's something that we do want to encourage as just your daily act of worship. But also, just if you have questions on how to get connected, if you would like that personal meeting, if you would need to give some prayer requests, send us an email. Make sure that we know that so we can be walking with you on a daily and a weekly basis. Again, like I said, if you're going to the hospital, you're having a procedure done, let us know. I mean, we want to set up food trains for you. Make sure that you guys are taken care of when you get out, all right? There are ways that we can still be the body and we can be connected, all right? So the second thing is this, is we do have a couple other people in the room. One of them is back from 5-6 weeks of traveling. His name is Bob. Is he actually inside right now, or is he out there working like usual? Where's the man? Bob Hagen, right here, all right, guys. So he leads the march for our missions team, and as a church, we do all kinds of mission work. And if you're wondering, hey, how can I be plugged in with that? One of the major ways we're doing that is through the Snack Pack program. We're still supporting 100+ kids on a weekly basis, making sure that they have food during the weekends when the food stamps aren't actually providing it. And so that's one way, but then there's others as well. So make sure you connect with him. Help you out. And then also James Kaufman in the back here, if you're asking, how can I personally get connected? What does it look like to be able to partner with someone in my discipleship process, like he was talking about last week, if you heard the sermon? Please talk with him as well after the service. So there has been all kinds of discipleship and ministry done throughout our time here. I think, did Thomas actually leave after I asked him to hang out? Yeah, he's gone. All right, well, then what I'm going to do is actually, Bob, if you'll make your way up here for a second, what I'm going to ask is I'm going to take a panorama photo. So speaking of idols, the Methodist Church sent us a golden something here recently, all right? So this is a little bit weird, but this is actually John Wesley. This is called the Wig Award. And so what they did was they sent us this with $1,000 for our church, for us in our mission efforts and what we're doing within the community and through our church, just because as they looked over the Methodist Church, we were in the top percentile of those reaching out and doing ministry. So that is for us, that is as a community, as an encouragement to say, let's keep it going, guys. What a beautiful opportunity for us to continue. And so what I'm going to ask, actually, because it looks a little bit like you there, if you'll hold this and kind of face me, I want to take a panorama photo of everyone so we can still stay socially distanced. If you don't have a mask on right now and you have one, go ahead and put it on, because I'm going to send this to the district. Okay? All right. And this way we can say, hey, thanks for thinking of us and seeing us, and then we'll close up the day, all right? So here we go. If you guys want to give a thumbs up or something like that, go for it. Here comes the panorama. All right. And all the way back to Andy. What's up, Andy? All right. That was very awkward and very awesome. Thank you. All right, guys. Well, guys, have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next week. Anything comes up, shoot us an email. Blessings, y'all.